A very good morning to all of you, and I welcome you all to Ansarkari. So, in this video, we'll be analyzing and we'll be taking up the important articles from all the four newspapers that we analyze every single day. And this is going to be for 5th of April 2023. So, let's start with today's analysis. So security issues are on table as Prime Minister meets the Bhutan King. So we have seen that Bhutan King, he's on India's visit. And security issues, obviously, because there was Doklam issue. So there was a territory which is there in Bhutan, but India, Bhutan, and China, they were involved in that. So the Bhutanese king, he is there in India and discussing the entire gamut of ties and progress in boundary talks between China and Bhutan, particularly about the Doklam, as I just mentioned you. So apart from that, if we get some important information related to India and Bhutan ties, so that would be important for us from the examination perspective. So India and Bhutan, they remain in close coordination over all security matters. And apart from that, there was discussion regarding the latest situation along the India-Bhutan border, as well as the progress in the boundary talks between China and Bhutan, particularly above the Doklam Tri-Junction point. And so responding to a number of questions about the possibility of a boundary deal between China and Bhutan that could negatively impact India's strategic interest in the region, Mr. Quatra, who is the foreign secretary, he told that the two leaders, they had discussed the entire gamut of the bilateral cooperation and issues of the national and regional interest, and that the two countries, they share an exemplary relationship of trust, goodwill, and mutual understanding. So basically there's a concern कि अगर Bhutan and China they go ahead with any kind of boundary deal and अगर उसका कोई negative impact is there on India's strategic interest, so basically all of those issues and concerns they were discussed with Bhutan. So yesterday's newspaper में हमने ये भी देखा था कि China is basically, it would be coming up with names of 11 areas which are located in Arunachal Pradesh. So on that lines, invented the names it will not alter the reality of Arunachal Pradesh. This is coming from India. And India, it rejected China's renaming of several places which are there in Arunachal Pradesh, saying कि even if you invent new names, even if basically China invent new names, so that is not going to change the status quo. And जो reality है, आप उसको change नहीं कर सकते हो merely just by changing the names or coming up with a new invention of names. And this is not the first time that China has made such an attempt, and we reject this outrightly. And Arunachal Pradesh, it is and it has been and it will always be an integral and inalienable part of India. So attempts to assign the invented names, the attempted invented names, it will not alter this reality. So that's there. So from the geography perspective, what is important for us is the location of the Depsang Plains. So it's been almost 3 years later that Chinese forces, they continue to deny India's patrols access to the strategic Depsang Plains, to which we previously had unimpeded access, and now Chinese, they are attempting to undermine the status quo in Arunachal Pradesh. So already we know about the Chinese incursions in eastern Ladakh, and now they are basically attempting the same thing even in Arunachal Pradesh. So Nathula Pass, it is there in the state of Sikkim. So given the name of Nathula here in the newspaper, you need to find out all the important passes which are there in the Himalayan ranges. So that would be important, and even the Western Ghats. So that becomes important. So you just need to know about only the important ones. So that would be sufficient. So World Bank, it lowers India's growth forecast to 6.3%. So these are merely forecast. What is important for us is the actual numbers, but we'll just go through it once. And it is basically expecting more slowdown in India, and World Bank, it has revised down the India's growth projection for this current financial year, which was started on 1st of April 2023. So it has revised it down to 6.3% from 6.6%. And the reasons are the rising borrowing cost and current global economic situation. So उसकी वजह से World Bank feels कि इंडिया के ऊपर भी उसके कुछ impacts हो सकते हैं. And when we talk about the rising borrowing cost, so obviously the main reason is the tight monetary policy. And we are having, or we are following, the central banks, they are following tight monetary policy because they want to contain down, they want to control the rising inflation. But we are seeing कि inflation को हम इतना ज़्यादा control नहीं कर पा रहे हैं, and repo rate has been increased a lot. So यहाँ पे जब हम elasticity की बात करते हैं between these two things, the increase of repo rate and the reduction in the inflation rate, that is not so high. So that is one thing that we need to understand. And because of this rising borrowing cost, iska direct impact and negative impact would be upon the investment rate. So that's why growth bhi iski wajah se impact ho sakti hai. This is the one main reason. And the second reason that is being cited here by the World Bank is the current global economic situation. So because of this, our export sector, it would be impacted, and that has been one of the major contributors in India's GDP growth. So that's why these are two important reasons, and we need to have clarity ki inki wajah se how India's growth it can slow down. So I have explained you in detail the reasoning in simple words. So finally, doctors in Rajasthan, they call off their protest against the Right to Health Bill, which was recently passed. And इसके बारे में भी हमने a number of times we have discussed कि what is the reason why doctors they are protesting. So majorly जो private sector doctors है, they are protesting क्योंकि the bill, or now since it is a law, it mentions कि under the emergency situation, both the private sector and the public sector hospitals, they would have to provide free of cost treatment. So that is one of the main contentions, because we know that private sector, its main and sole motive is to make and maximize profits. And for the public sector, obviously, we know the main aim or objective is welfare of the people. So that's why we can say that private sector doctors, they are protesting, but right now they have called off their protest. So that's a good development. So every resident of Rajasthan has the right to emergency treatment care without prepayment of the requisite fees or charges to any health institution. So though Rajasthan, it became the first state to legislate upon such a law or upon such a bill, which is right to health. And private hospitals, they are apprehensive of the government's interference in their functioning after the enforcement of this law. So that is their concern. Moving forward, coming to the editorial page, so the new economics for a new world. So let's understand this article. It's going to be very important for us. So it is talking majorly about three things. Firstly is lessons from China. Secondly, the problems with the current paradigm. Thirdly, the crisis and the inadequacy of the current system. So we'll understand all these three heads. So, starting with the introduction, so Indian government is grappling with three economic challenges at the same time. So, one is the management of inflation, interest rates, and the exchange rates, for which RBI it is expected to find a solution for it. The second challenge is negotiating bilateral and multilateral trade agreements that protect the interest of India's farmers and workers, for which coordination is required amongst the ministries of commerce, industry, and agriculture. Coming to the third challenge, The third problem that is affecting all the citizens is secure employment with adequate incomes, which involves all the ministries and all state governments. So the third one, it is linked with the other two also. So the things, they are interrelated when we talk about these three simultaneous challenges for the Indian economy right now. So it has become a principal cause of social tension when we talk about the growing unemployment, because we are seeing that even when we talk about the private sector, IT sector, we are seeing that there are so many layoffs which has happened this year. So because of that, we are seeing that unemployment is increasing, and that has also become one of the causes of social tension and the political conflicts in the country. So given these three challenges for us right now, economies, they do not have a systemic solution for this poly crisis. So economists, they do not have a common systemic solution to deal with all these three challenges, and there's no consensus amongst them, and that is broken down even about the solutions to its separate parts. So कोई consensus नहीं है on whatever solutions are available with us when we talk about the economist. So coming to the first subheading, that is learning and taking away the lessons from China for India. So economists, they agree that more investments, it will boost the growth. So it's a simple thing that अगर ज़्यादा investment होगी economy में, तो obviously growth भी ज़्यादा होगी and it will be boosting it further. Therefore, there are lessons in China's history. So China and India, they opened their economies to the global trade around the same time. हमें पता है that both the countries opened up their economies around the same time, around 35 years ago, and both the countries, they had similar level of per capita income back then when they opened up their economies, and they also had similar levels of industrial technology as well. So jab Indian economy and Chinese economy, they came up with a reform, so we can say कि almost दोनों similar position पे थे. But later on, when China, it started attracting more of foreign investment, that was many times more than India, and the incomes of its citizens, when we say that their per capita income, that increased 5 times faster, क्योंकि वहाँ पे foreign direct investment जो था वो exponentially it started increasing because of the structural reforms that China came up with. So उसकी वजह से जो per capita income increase हुई of the Chinese citizens, that was 5 times faster. And China, it became an industry and technology powerhouse with time, which United States, it is being threatened by. So आज के time में ये USA के लिए एक threat हो गया है, and the West, it wants to encircle and contain China on this thing. So since wages in China, they have become much higher आज के time में, अगर हम बात करें, so this is one of the biggest challenges that China is struggling with right now, कि जो wages हैं, they are increasing in China. So इस context में India is in a advantageous position. So India seems well placed to attract global investors, क्योंकि जब हम cost of manufacturing या cost of businesses की बात करते हैं, so that is comparatively low in India compared to China. So to attract these investors, India must compete with other countries. And specifically, अगर हम India के main competition की बात करें, तो now that is coming from the Southeast Asian economies. Vietnam is one of them. So Vietnam, it is often cited as a country that is proving to be more attractive than India to Western and the Japanese investors. So वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड की बात करें या जापान की बात करें, तो फॉरेन डायरेक्ट इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिए या फॉरेन पोर्टफोलियो इन्वेस्टर्स के लिए भी अगर हम बात करें, तो वियतनाम एक बेटर ऑप्शन उनके लिए इमर्ज हो रहा है कंपेयर्ड टू either the western world या हम जापान की बात करें. So therefore, after China, now economists, they are turning towards Vietnam also to understand why basically, what is the reason why the investors, they are now moving towards the Southeast Asian economies like Vietnam. So Western neoliberal economists, they have attributed China's remarkable economic growth to its adoption of free trade policies, and they seem to see only this as a cause for Vietnam's recent spurt also. So according to the Western neoliberal economists की हम यहाँ बात कर रहे हैं, basically neoliberalism, basically when the economies they were opening up, जब हम globalization की बात करते हैं तो then we talk about the neoliberal economist. So they say कि जो remarkable growth हमने चाइना में देखी है उसका main reason is the free trade policy that it adopted. And right now वियतनाम जो major attraction बन रहा है for FDI, for FPI, that is also same कि they are adopting or they are having, they're working upon this free trade policy. So when we look into Vietnam, they rediscover what was learned from China. So again, जो similar lines पे जैसे China ने पहले काम किया, we are seeing as per the Economist कि Vietnam is also in similar situation, या फिर Vietnam भी वही similar steps ले रहा. That's why it is becoming a major attraction. And when both the countries they opened to the foreign investors, China opened obviously before Vietnam. They had already attained high levels of human development. So जब चाइनीज इकोनॉमी ओपन हुई उस टाइम पे जो ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट थी, जो ह्यूमन रिसोर्स था, वो इट वाज वेरी क्वालिटेटिव. वहां पे ऑलरेडी इट वाज वेरी डेवलप्ड एंड स्किल्ड, एंड देयर वाज यूनिवर्सल एजुकेशन, देयर वाज गुड पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम्स बिफोर द चाइनीज इकोनॉमी ओपनड अप. सो इसकी वजह से जो एफडीआई का बेनिफिट हुआ दैट वाज एक्सपोनेंशियल. सो वेयर एज इवन 10 years अगो इन इंडिया, जब हम इंडिया की बात करते हैं तो ट्रेड एंड ग्रोथ इकोनॉमिस्ट लाइक जगदीश Bhagwati, they were dismissive of the economists like Amartya Sen, who advocated that human development theory of growth. So there's this theory of human development for the growth. So कुछ economists जब हम बात करते हैं on the famous economists in India, so that includes Jagdish Bhagwati and Amartya Sen. So basically they were not on similar page when we talk about the human development theory of growth. So Jagdish Bhagwati said कि size of the economic pie must be increased before it can be redistributed. So they had the order wrong, and basic human development it must precede the growth because it is the means for growth. सो एक ये बिलीव था कि जैसे हमने चाइना के केस में भी देखा दैट बिफोर द चाइनीज इकोनॉमी वाज ओपनड अप, वहां पे ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट ऑलरेडी हो चुकी थी एंड दे वर परफॉर्मिंग नाइसली व्हेन इट कम्स टू यूनिवर्सल एजुकेशन एंड गुड पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम. बट इंडिया के केस में ऐसा नहीं था, या बोल सकते हैं ऐसा कम था. सो देयर वाज दिस बिलीव कि बिफोर द इकोनॉमी इज ओपनड अप वी नीड टू हैव द बेसिक ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट बिफोर ओपनिंग द इकोनॉमी. अगर हमें हम ग्रोथ की बात करते हैं बिकॉज वी फील ऐसा होता है कि ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट या ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, स्किल्ड ह्यूमन रिसोर्स या जो आज के टाइम में हम डेमोग्राफिक डिविडेंड की भी बात करते हैं, तो उस केस में दैट इज अ मीन्स फॉर ग्रोथ. सो वो एक मीन्स है, एक एलिमेंट, इम्पोर्टेंट एलिमेंट है इफ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट बीइंग अ डेवलप्ड इकोनॉमी बाय 2047. सो दैट इज वन बिलीफ. And incomes भी simultaneously increase होनी चाहिए to enable more consumption and attract more investments. So that needs to be there. And China के केस में exactly यही हुआ कि उनकी जो per capita income थी that also increased exponentially by 5 times. And before opening up, they were like they had a good human resource, they had skilled laborers, so that helped them. नाउ कमिंग टू द सेकेंड थिंग कि आज के जो सिस्टम में, आज की इकोनॉमिक जो हमारा सिस्टम है उसमें क्या प्रॉब्लम्स हैं. सो द क्लॉक ऑब्वियसली इट कैन नॉट बी टर्न बैक, बट इंडियाज पॉलिसी मेकर्स दे विल हैव टू फाइंड अ वे टू स्ट्रेंथन द रूट्स ऑफ द इकोनॉमिक ट्री व्हाइल हार्वेस्टिंग इट्स फ्रूट्स एट द सेम टाइम. सो यहाँ हम जब रूट्स ऑफ इकोनॉमी की बात करते हैं तो दैट ऑब्वियसली इंक्लूड्स द ह्यूमन रिसोर्स, द एजुकेशन. ऑब्वियसली ह्यूमन रिसोर्स की अगर हम बात कर रहे हैं तो एजुकेशन सिस्टम का बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट रोल होता है. एंड ऑब्वियसली किसी भी चीज के लिए वी नीड टू हैव अ गुड पब्लिक हेल्थ सिस्टम. So strengthening our roots, and the current paradigm of economics, it cannot provide the solutions. So it is too linear, too mathematical, and too mechanical. So economists have also separated themselves from other disciplines into their own self-referential silos. So they should break out of it and examine the emerging science of the complex self-adapted systems. So जो जैसे भी अभी currently changes हो रहे हैं, तो it is important कि we break out, we come out of our shells. We have talking about the economists, and we need to adopt to these complex self-adaptive emerging science and जो technology systems emerge हो रहे हैं. So it provides a way for the economists and the policymakers to comprehend the complex socio-economic systems in which many forces of the different sorts they interact with each other, and some of which they're not easy to even quantify. So to have much more clear understanding, क्योंकि जो अभी जिस पेस से भी डेवलपमेंट्स हो रही है वो भी चीज़ों को थोड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स बनाती है. सो इट इज़ इम्पोर्टेंट जो सोशो इकोनॉमिक सिस्टम में चैलेंजेस हैं, हाउ थिंग्स आर चेंजिंग, क्योंकि वी कैन से कि आज के टाइम में एवरीथिंग इज इंटरकनेक्टेड. सो दैट्स वाई चीजें थोड़ी कॉम्प्लेक्स हो गई है, बट देन अगेन इट इज इम्पोर्टेंट. वी कैन नॉट एलिनेट थिंग्स इन silos and then think about even when we are talking about coming up with solutions or coming up with any schemes or policies. So there are some fundamental flaws in the current paradigm of economics. So हम यहाँ currently economics की बात कर रहे हैं, and economists they often cite that there's a theory which is called the Tinbergen's theory, which states that the number of policy instruments they must equal the number of policy goals. So as per this Tinbergen's theory, जितने ज़्यादा आपके policy goals होंगे उतने ज़्यादा आपके पास policy instruments भी होने चाहिए to achieve those goals. So this justifies the necessity of independent monetary institutions for managing the inflation. We need to have separate trade and industry specialists and separate policies for the environment management and agriculture. क्योंकि जितने ज्यादा, जैसे अभी हमने बात करी as per this theory, जितने ज्यादा हमारे goals होंगे उतने ज्यादा हमारे पास instruments या policies भी होनी चाहिए. So this is a mechanical and linear view of how a complex system it works. कि यहाँ पे हम सेपरेटली इन्वायरमेंट मैनेजमेंट की बात कर रहे हैं, सेपरेटली हम ट्रेड पॉलिसीज की बात कर रहे हैं, सेपरेटली मैनेजमेंट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन के लिए ऑटोनोमस एंड इंडिपेंडेंट मॉनेटरी इंस्टीट्यूशंस की बात कर रहे हैं. बट ये हो गई एक लीनियर अप्रोच towards the complex system. So in the complex organic systems, which are all natural, and the socio-economic systems, they are basically the root causes, they contribute to many outcomes. So moreover, outcomes circle back to feed the roots too, and therefore we see that the behavior of the system it cannot be explained by the linear causes and effects. So linearly आज के टाइम में तो हम बात नहीं कर सकते हैं, and all the complex adaptive systems which are like all biological, natural, socio-economic systems, they take different shapes in different places and different times, and even if they have the same constituents, so obviously we cannot expect, and we also do not see this in real life कि they would behave in same manner. So though every human body it has same organs, every human being it is different. So likewise here, even in case of economics, that's very true. So good doctors, they know this, that good doctors, they listen to understand their patients' problems every time before prescribing the treatments. Coming to the third part of this article, which is talking about the crisis and the inadequacy of the system. So macroeconomists, they search for global solutions. So जब हम macro economy की बात करते हैं तो solutions भी बड़े होने चाहिए, solutions भी ऐसे होने चाहिए जो उनका global या broader impact हो, so that we are able to tackle the challenges that we are facing. So trade and monetary policies that fit the United States, that fit China, Vietnam or India, it will not fit the needs of the others. So obviously एक universal approach होना, it would not work for each and every economy around the world, because every economy is different, their size is different, their nature is different, and obviously the challenges would be different. So उनके challenges के लिए solutions would also be different. So their needs they have also emerged from their own history. So economists, they arrive at solutions by comparing the data trends of the different countries. So obviously यहाँ पे statistics का भी बहुत important role है कि data trends को analyze करना before coming up with a solution is very important. So different equations, different econometrics की हम बात करते हैं, that is done, and in the models we see that people, they are the numbers, and economists, they do not listen to the real people, whereas politicians try to at least listen to the real people. This is one thing which is being said there. So Indian economists, they complain that bad politics is coming in their way of good economics. So एक ये चीज भी है कि intermixing of politics and economics, and that's what an economist they're concerned about. And whereas bad economics, it could be coming in the way of harmonious progress of the country. So Einstein said that working harder to solve the systemic problems with the same thinking that caused them, that is madness. So that's true. ये कुछ general चीजें हैं which is applicable, and global solutions and economic theories that were invented in the West, they have also caused problems for which new solutions are essential. So जो थ्योरीज, जो पॉलिसीज बाकी कंट्रीज के लिए वर्क करी, इट माइट बी पॉसिबल कि उनकी वजह से प्रॉब्लम्स हो सकती है, सो उन प्रॉब्लम्स के लिए भी वी नीड न्यू सॉल्यूशंस, एंड वी कैन नॉट बी लाइक मूविंग with only one thing which is not changing. We are not working upon that with changing times, changing technology, changing challenges. So obviously status quo is not going to work in economics right now, given the current situation and challenges and how things are reshaping, how things are getting reordered. And the inadequacy of the current paradigm, it was revealed by several crises in this millennia. So इस millennia की अगर हम crisis की बात करें in terms of economic crisis, so firstly we had the major one was the 2008 global financial crisis. There was inequitable management of the global COVID-19 pandemic and the looming global climate crisis that is there. So clearly, one solution, it cannot fit all the challenges. So we saw कि 2008 global financial crisis, even जो globally different economies में impact भी हुआ, उसका solution भी it cannot be the same. And जिस तरीके से global financial crisis को tackle किया गया, उस तरीके से we couldn't have managed or controlled or dealt with the global COVID-19 pandemic. And similarly, right now we are seeing global climate crisis. So even in this case, different economies के लिए different solutions होंगे as per their vulnerabilities and the level of threats that they are facing. So that's why we are saying that one size fits all approach, it is not going to work. So Vasudev Kutumbakam, which is also the theme of the G20 this year, India is leading, and a new economics is what is the need of the hour is right now, and a movement to change the paradigm of the economics science to bring perspectives from the sciences of complex self-adaptive systems. It has begun even in the West. So India's economists, they must step forward and they not just follow these developments. So ये नहीं कि whatever developments are happening, we are just following that. No, it's not. It shouldn't be that way. And we need to come forward. We need to come forward with our own ideas and theories. So they must lead them to. We must also lead those countries in terms of whatever like solutions or whatever policies and changes they are being proposed by the Western world. So we need to lead also and not just follow them. So this was a very crucial and important article that we discussed and majorly focused upon the new economics for a new emerging world. So here this article is focusing upon a case for marriage equality. So here it is talking about the same-sex marriages. So the case is sub judice. And let's see what is going to be the final verdict, the Supreme Court. But the things that are being highlighted here is that citizens with equal rights. So definitely citizens, they have equal rights. So first that it is argued is that legalizing the queer marriages, it will destroy the concept of family, which is the fundamental building block of the society. So this is one argument against legalizing the same-sex marriages. So for long, queer people, they have had to deal with their rights being granted as gifts from the heteronormative society, but no more. So we are all equal citizens of the country and deserve the same rights as cisgender heterosexual people. They have their own rights. So this is one explanation or argument against this first argument against the legalization, that times they have history is gone, and आज के situation की बात करें तो everybody is equal, all the citizens, they have equal rights. So even obviously transgenders, they are a part of it, and that's what they are demanding right now, that queer people, they are demanding their equal rights. They're not just in terms of marriage, but also of horizontal reservation and protection from the natal families. So they don't demand these as largesse to be bestowed upon us by the society, but that they be accorded to us as equal citizens of this democratic nation. So, being the citizens of this country, they are demanding these rights. And it is true that laws which are relating to marriage, they have the religious genesis. However, Indian law on marriage, it's a mixture of common law and religion. And while traditionally marriage under the Hindu law, it is a sacrament, it stopped being so when divorce was introduced. So marriage is now nothing but a status conferred by the law. So it's merely a law. It's merely a status as per the law. And the court said that in Sabrimala case that religion must give way to the constitutional morality, though a review of the judgment that is still pending. And nevertheless, most parties in the marriage equality case before the court are those who want to get married under the Hindu Marriage Act. And so the case is obviously sub judice. So we have talked about the Special Marriage Act in this context and also discuss the important provisions of it. So it is also argued that the laws pertaining to the marriage, they necessitate procreation. So while this may be true, there seem to be no attempts to take away the marriage rights of the heterosexual married couples who do not procreate as per the mutual consent. So while entering into a queer relationship, both the parties, they are aware that they will be unable to procreate. So this is called the social or the circumstantial infertility, and the term it was initially coined to describe women who did not have children despite no medical condition, and it is now used in the context of queer people as well. So this circumstantial infertility. So it is also said key conventional conceptualizations of the family and marriage, they are facing evolutionary challenges. So these things and these beliefs, they are facing evolutionary challenges. Things are evolving, and obviously they are not the same as they were 10 years ago. And so that's another thing, and it's a legitimate and legal need. That's what the community is demanding for. So this is not to argue that marriage it will lead to the liberation of this community. In fact, they feel that marriage does not obfuscate but lays bare the caste hierarchies that embolden the discrimination and the segregation. So, but despite being a faulty institution, marriage it is a legitimate legal need in order to file taxes jointly or inherit the property, open bank accounts, and choose nominees for the insurance policies. So it's a kind of a legitimate and legal need for to fulfill all these things. So when we talk about India's surging fuel exports, so the major share or the major development growth we are seeing is coming from the Gujarat refineries. So its share in India's exports that has increased from 20.8% to today it is at 30%. So you can see that the share of Gujarat has increased, that of Maharashtra has declined, Tamil Nadu has also declined marginally. So an exponential increase in Gujarat's share is what we can take away. So our goods exports, they have increased in the previous financial year, and that has been estimated to cross around $320 billion. And final data would be there with us by the middle of April. So here we've been talking about open artificial intelligence. So now it is open source promise by Twitter. So why the richest man in the world made this recommendation algorithm of Twitter open to the public, and how has the open source community reacted to this thing, and how does the micro blogging sites algorithm, all of that function. So we can just have a quick look at this thing. So on 1st of April, Twitter's recommendation code was made public. So developers, they can now modify and they can make improvements to that code. So this is simply what we mean by open source, that it would be now available to each and every developer, and you need to identify some mistakes or some changes that you feel can help. So you can do the modification and hence lead to the improvement of that particular code. And social media platforms, they need experienced developers for this to keep building new features and deploying them successfully. So here in this case, Mr. Musk might think opening the source code to external developers could potentially solve this human resource bottleneck that they're facing. So it might be possible that because of this reason, he might have taken this decision of going ahead with the open source. And that's there. So some see this reveal as a step in the right direction for the future of humanity, and others, they know that the code does not reveal much about how it is used by the platform. So there was recently UN Water Conference. So what was discussed is, we'll be going through that. So what did this report, which was titled Water for Sustainable Development 2018 to 28, recommended? What is the most common cause for the groundwater over abstraction? So there was this UN 2023 water conference, and this was the first such meeting in 46 years. And in recent report titled for this, UN, it recognized the urgent need for action, given that we are not on track to meet the 2030 SDG goals for water, that is ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. So this is the SDG goal related to water. So what is this water conference all about? So water sector, it is definitely, we know about the challenges. It is prone to fragmentation because water problems, they tend to be local. And if a particular lake, it is polluted, or a particular area, it is often flooded, it needs local solutions. So therefore, there is an inherent problem in mobilizing globally for these local problems. And last UN water conference, it was held in 1977. So these facts become important for us, and it was groundbreaking as it resulted in the first global action plan recognizing that all peoples, whatever their stage of development in social and economic conditions, they have this right to have water, access to drinking water in quantities and of a quality that is equal to their basic needs. So this came up after the 1977 conference, which was for the first time. So this declaration, it led to several decades of global funding and concerted effort to lower the population without access to safe drinking water. So after that, several efforts were made. And talking about the current challenges related to water sector, so extending services to underserved populations, that is relatively uncontroversial, and it comes down to finding the money to pay for it. So this is already occurring in India through programs such as when we like specifically, हम अगर हम इंडिया की बात करें कि कौन से ऐसे programs हैं जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया is running या state is running, so that potable water, it is reaching to every household. That includes the Swachh Bharat Mission, Jal Jeevan Mission, and the Jal Shakti Ministry. So challenge is that improving the access to water and sanitation no longer translates directly to the sustained access to water and sanitation. So sustained access to water and sanitation आज के time में कोई challenge नहीं है, but uh, quality is the main thing. So many drinking water projects, they have failed because they drew too much groundwater, or the water resources, they were contaminated, leaving the communities again with no access to water. So ये एक major reason रहा है why जो भी different drinking water projects चलाए गए, launch किए गए, they have failed because then it led to over extraction of the groundwater, and obviously then it ultimately resulted in the contaminated thing. So जो major reliance है on groundwater, that is from the agricultural pumping sector. So the only way to solve this problem in heavily irrigated places like we have Punjab, it is simply to extract lesser water. So that is the very simple and straightforward solution. So this would need a policy change which requires many agencies and ministries. So इसके लिए policy changes करने पड़ेंगे जिसमें हमें बहुत सारी ministries, agencies की cooperation and help and coordination चाहिए. And as such, water problem, it is no longer about कि आपके पास वाटर का एक्सेस है या नहीं. सो द रिमेनिंग एसडीजी टारगेट्स दे परटेन टू सस्टेनेबल एग्रीकल्चर की हम बात करते हैं, सस्टेनेबल इंडस्ट्री, नेचुरल इकोसिस्टम्स. सो दीज टारगेट्स दे आर वेरी हार्डर टू अचीव एंड given the political choices and a strong democracy. So ये कुछ challenges हैं आज के टाइम की अगर हम बात करें. So अभी recently जो water conference हुई उसमें क्या commitments की बात हुई. So let's have a look at that. So there were 713 voluntary commitments by philanthropic donors, governments, corporations, and NGOs. So एक तो ये चीज हो गई कि सिर्फ governments या countries are not a part of these conferences, and this also included $50 billion commitment from India to improve rural drinking water services under the Jal Jeevan Mission. So on the technology front, अगर हम technology front की बात करें, so apart from specific innovations in wastewater treatment, there were several proposals for incubation platforms focusing on water management also. So wastewater treatment plants तो है ही, उसके बाद incubation platforms की भी बात हुई, and there are already many solutions for the knowledge sharing, and thus we need to accelerate cross learning. So awareness already इसकी बहुत बात की जाती है. So an effort called Making Rights Real offered to help marginalized communities and women understand how to exercise their rights. So similarly, we had the Water for Women Fund offered mechanisms for more effective and sustainable water sanitation, hygiene outcomes for women. However, whether these communities they will become binding through the COP process, only time is going to tell us. So when we talk about the Lokpal, so it closes 68% of the graft complaints against the officers without action, as per the report. So on 5th of January, Lokpal said that complaints not filed in a prescribed form will not be entertained. So it is the Department of Person Training which is related to it. And since 2019-20, the anti-corruption body received 8,700 complaints, out of which 5,981 complaints they were disposed of. And apart from that, around 90% complaints they were not in the prescribed format. So uski wajah se they got rejected. So Lokpal is a country's first anti-corruption body, which was instituted 4 years ago to investigate into complaints against the public functionaries. That also includes the Prime Minister of India. And that's there. Apart from that, so this Lokpal Act, it was passed in 2013. The country's first Lokpal, which was Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh, it was appointed in 2019 along with 8 other members. So that's there. So Germany may offer sale of advanced submarines to India. So for us, just knowing about the names would be working for us here in this case. So we are seeing that there is, since January 2020, Defense Acquisition Council shortlisted Mazgaon Dock Limited and Larsen & Toubro as the India partners for P75 deal, which is the first to be processed under the strategic partnership model of the procurement procedure. So the 5 foreign original equipment manufacturers, they are these. Names are not important. So the request for the proposal was originally issued in July 2021. And since then, it has been just extended several times. So the project ran into rough weather over a specification that the submarine on offer, they should have an operational air independent proportional module with an endurance of 2 weeks. So it is the advanced conventional submarines that is going to be made available to India from Germany via government to government route. So the project name is Project 75I, and advanced diesel electric submarines are going to be there. So the National Medical Council, it has explained the code of conduct for teachers and students while studying or working, and relationship between the teachers and students and the expectations and their collective responsibility through a set of guidelines. So this is India's regulatory body for the medical education and the medical professionals. That is the Medical Council of India. We're talking about that. And it's for the first time that they have issued such a set of guidelines. So it talks about the role of students, their responsibility, and likewise for the teachers also. So for teachers, it's stated that education was a moral enterprise, and teachers, they should ensure that students, they were competent, caring, and empathetic and ethical in their practice. So teachers, they were role models, and they should also follow boundaries with their students, even during the interactions on social media also. And as per India Justice Report, we are seeing that vacancies of judges that remains high, and the cases are also piling up. And that can be one of the reasons that because of high vacancies, we are seeing cases are piling up. So the chart here, it is showing the share of the cases which are pending in the high courts across various years, and the share of the cases pending for more than 5 years across 25 high courts in the country. So there are a total 25 high courts in India, and the pendency in high courts, it is worse than in the subordinate courts. So high courts are not performing nicely compared to the subordinate courts, and cases which are pending for over 5 years is 51.7% of the cases. For 5 to 10 years is 24% of the cases. From 10 to 20 years is 19% of the cases. So likewise, we have this data. So again, China warns against the Philippine and the US deal. That is, it feels it's a threat to the regional peace. So we're talking about the Indo-Pacific region. And so USA is trying to strengthen its military deployment in the region. So recently, a day back or two, we saw about this thing that Philippines is going to provide more military stations or deployment areas to the US. So finally, Finland, it joins the NATO bloc, and Russia says that move, it will escalate the Ukraine conflict further. So NATO Secretary General welcomes Finland to the alliance's ranks, and he says that Russian president, who cited the NATO expansion as one justification for the Ukraine invasion, is getting exactly the opposite. So that's there. And so the headquarters of NATO are in Brussels, Belgium, and so that's the important thing. So we need to know about the latest entrant, and apart from that, the geography of this region, of the countries which surround the Finland, and even the countries which share the borders with Russia. So from the geographic map perspective, the things are very important. So you need to have a clear look and understanding about all such type of questions. Coming to the business page, the goods exports, they're likely to hit a 9-month high in March. And these are the expectations as of now. And ADB, it cuts India's financial year to 24's growth to 6.4%. And again, even this body is flagging the slowing investment growth rate. So it's the Asian Development Bank. And we on the first page, we discussed about the World Bank's growth forecast. Even they have slashed it, and two important reasons. So again, one of them was the slowing down of the investment rate. So I've explained you why it is responsible, and that's there. So between 2015 to 19, India's contribution to the GDP growth in developing Asia was 22%, while China's contribution was 53%. So People's Republic of China, it still accounts for about half of the region's growth, but its contribution, it will decline. That is also one thing. So India's contribution to developing Asia's growth is expected to rise to 27% by 2024-25, and with China's impact slipping from 51 to 46%. So this rapid growth, it reflects the healthy domestic consumption in India, which will be further boosted by the tax cuts and exemptions. So because of the more limited role of the exports in the economy, India, it will be less affected by the slowdown in the advanced economies. So that is also a one prediction कि इंडिया की अगर हम बात करें, इवन व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट द फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर या बैंकिंग सेक्टर, जब हम एक्सटर्नल सोर्सेज ऑफ रिलायंस या बोरोइंग की बात करते हैं, तो अगेन उसमें भी इंडिया की रिलायंस डिपेंडेंस इज वेरी लेस, जिसकी वजह से वी से कि दैट इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टेंट रीजंस व्हाई द इंडियन इकोनॉमी इज रेसिलेंट टू द ग्लोबल चेंजेस और सच ग्लोबल क्राइसिस. सो इवन इन केस ऑफ एक्सपोर्ट्स ऑल्सो कि हमारी इकोनॉमी की ग्रोथ या हमारी जीडीपी इज नॉट इट इज नॉट being majorly driven by the exports. So अगर हम exports पे ज़्यादा dependent होते, ज़्यादा share होता of exports in our GDP growth, so that would be obviously clearly dependent upon the global economy. So अगर globally demand ज़्यादा रहेगी तो हमारी economy अच्छे से perform करेगी, and अगर अभी right now जैसे हम देख रहे हैं global slowdown हो रहा है, तो obviously exports जो हम goods export करते हैं उनकी demand कम हो जाएगी, तो obviously naturally हमारी economy पे भी direct impact पड़ेगा. तो उसकी वजह से जो risk वाला factor है that increases, it leads to increase in vulnerability as well. So that is not the case in India, so which is a good thing. So जो windfall taxes थे on fuels, they have been virtually scrapped for now. So windfall taxes basically एक huge amount का tax होता है on the profit, specifically जो profits सडनली कमाए जाते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ एनी ग्लोबल इवेंट और डोमेस्टिक रीजन भी हम बोल सकते हैं, एंड दिस इज लाइक मेजरली दीज आर इम्प्लाइड ऑन द ऑयल कंपनीज, क्योंकि वहां ऐसा देखने को बहुत ज्यादा मिलता है कि सडनली उनका प्रॉफिट किसी एक डिसीजन की वजह से बहुत ज्यादा इंक्रीज हो जाता है. सो दैट्स व्हाई देयर प्रॉफिट्स दे आर we basically impose the windfall taxes on their profits. So अभी recently हमने देखा कि OPEC प्लस ने डिसाइड किया है कि जो क्रूड ऑयल का आउटपुट है, जो प्रोडक्शन है, वो उसको कम करने वाले हैं. सो उसकी वजह से obviously naturally जो क्रूड ऑयल के प्राइसेस है they would be increasing again, and they have already increased. Coming to the mint, so what to expect from the changes in the competition law. So कल भी हमने इसके बारे में बात करी थी. तो recently G20 की infrastructure working group meeting conclude हुई है, and the focus was again on urban infrastructure financing, किस तरीके से कर सकते हैं. So Parliament, it has given its approval to the competition amendment bill also, which is laying the foundation for more effective oversight. So let's have a look at that. So why did the law, it needs amendment? This is the first question. So because economic activity, it is shifting, the things that they are evolving. We are seeing ki India mein startups, they are boosting. There is growth of digital economy, and there's need to improve the ease of doing business. That's why we need amendments. We need some updations as we move ahead, and as we are witnessing new changes. So the growth in the new age businesses, it meant that entities who are having huge valuation and market impacting power, they escaped this Competition Commission of India's merger regulations because they did not meet the asset and the sale based monetary threshold for seeking the CCI clearances. So jo basically new age ke businesses say that had huge valuation, so they were in a way escaping. And besides, a new approach to correcting the market distortions that was also needed after the penalties that were imposed by CCI, they tended to end up in courts affecting the consumers. So kuch changes इसलिए किए गए हैं, एंड क्या मेजर चेंजेस किए गए हैं, दैट इज इम्पोर्टेंट फॉर अस टू नो. सो basically to expedite the regulatory decisions when we talk about the mergers or acquisitions, and extend the CCI's regulatory reach to the transactions that are valued more than rupees 2000 crores, even if they do not meet the conventional criteria for the merger regulation based on the asset and sales. So it can now also deal with the cases having valuation more than rupees 2000 crores. And it also proposes greater deterrence by way of higher penalty provisions जो अभी recently introduced किए गए हैं, which are based on the global sales of the corporations. So higher penalty provisions have also been made a part of it as a, you know, with the aim of, having greater deterrence. And the leniency plus scheme, which aims to encourage the entities facing the cartel investigations to disclose their information about other cartels. That is what we mean by, or what is the objective of the leniency plus. And the bill also provides for the negotiated settlements as well. So when are they going to be implemented is the next question. So once they get the assent of the president, the Competition Commission of India, it plans to go for the public consultation on the proposed regulations, so that jo bhi finer aspects of the provisions, they are drawn up without any unintended consequences. So after having the public's consultations, they would be going further ahead, and government wants to introduce the rules and regulations before this year ends. So timeline की अगर हम बात करें about the new merger approval timeline, so what is that? So the bill, it proposes to expedite the CCI's clearance of the mergers and the acquisitions to within 150 days, which was earlier 210 days. So this has been reduced, and CCI has to frame a first impression of the transaction within 30 days of it getting a notification or notified of this deal. And if this deadline is missed by CCI of 30 days, so the deal would be deemed to be approved. And lastly, what about the digital competition? So a separate digital competition bill that has also been suggested by the two parliamentary committees to keep an eye on the digital economy, where the businesses, they can quickly attain the scale and tap the market and erect entry barriers to the new smaller firms. So obviously चीजें बहुत जल्दी होती है when we talk about the digital economy. So उसके लिए completely new set of law hona would be important, and this bill will likely propose do's and don'ts for the large digital economy firms, so that your market tipping behavior that is nipped in the bud. So this forward looking way, it is different from the conventional approach. Obviously conventionally things ab nahi ho sakte hain, because technology and how things function, that has definitely changed. Taking up the Financial Express now. So here, so stricter app store policy, it is in works for the big tech companies, and you need to disclose the reasons for not onboarding the apps. So Digital India Act norms, they are going to safeguard the smaller players, and it's going to address the issues like disclosure norms for the big tech giants, which includes Google, Apple, we have Android. So proposed regulations to ensure that they do not abuse their dominant position, they don't abuse and misuse that. Google and Apple, which own the Android and iOS, they would need to provide valid reasons for not onboarding the apps. So आपको proper reasoning देनी पड़ेगी. So as we were just talking about the competition amendment bill, so steeper fines की हमने बात करी थी, steeper penalties for the antitrust offenses. So Parliament, it has recently passed this amendment bill, and they will streamline India's decade-old Competition Act of 2002 and attune it to the changing market realities. So what is this amendment bill majorly talking about? Finance and Corporate Affairs Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, she has introduced 13 key amendments, and that would be improving upon an earlier version tabled back in 2022. So So as per one of the new provisions, contravention of the act could attract the penalty based on global turnover of the enterprise concerned. So not just in the economy in which you have like set up your business, but global turnover के ऊपर penalty impose करे जाने की बात की जा रही है. And recently गूगल का obviously जो issue था काफी न्यूज में रहा कि गूगल जो एंड्रॉयड सॉफ्टवेयर दैट इज ऑफ गूगल, सो वो कुछ अपने ही एप्स पहले से प्री इंस्टॉल कर देते थे इन द मोबाइल डिवाइसेस. सो बाकी एलिगेशंस ये थे कि दे बेसिकली मिसयूज देयर डोमिनेंट पावर इन द मार्केट टू मेक हायर अमाउंट्स ऑफ प्रॉफिट. सो उसके ऊपर बेसिकली वजह से देयर वर हाई फाइन्स व्हिच वर इम्पोज्ड ऑन गूगल. सो यहाँ पेनल्टीज मेंशन की गई है. एंड सो ग्लोबल टर्नओवर की जो प्रोविजन की अभी हमने बात करी, इसका एक्चुअली मीनिंग क्या है? सो अंडर द सेक्शन 27 ऑफ द CCI एक्ट यू कैन इम्पोज अ पेनल्टी ऑफ अप टू 10% ऑफ द एवरेज of the turnover for the last 3 years preceding the financial years of the firm that is concerned for the abuse of the dominant position. So 10% is the penalty जो आप impose कर सकते हो, and that is on the average turnover for the last 3 financial years. So that is a provision. And in case of if there is a cartel, so it can levy penalty up to 3 times of the profit for each year of the continuance of the agreement, or 10% of the turnover for the each year of the continuance of the agreement. So जो भी higher होगा आप accordingly उतने amount की penalty impose करोगे when we talk about the cartels. And the amendment makes it explicit that the regulator, it could impose the penalties based on the global turnover of an enterprise for any anti-competitive behavior. So earlier it was relevant turnover, now it has been changed to global turnover. And turnover, it means the global turnover derived from all the products and services by a person or an enterprise. So that's basically the global turnover. So Food Corporation of India के जो wheat stocks हैं, they are lowest since 2017. So wheat stocks with the FCI, they fell to the lowest since 2017, and they are close to the buffer on April 1, while rice stocks, they are at comfortable level and they are much above the buffer level. So wheat की जो हम buffer stocks की बात करें तो वो थोड़े हमारे कम होते जा रहे हैं, बिकॉज यहाँ पे हमने challenges की भी काफी बात कर चुके हैं. एवरी डे वी आर एनालाइजिंग दीज थिंग्स, वी आर सीइंग कि कैसे चेंजेस हो रहे हैं एंड हाउ थिंग्स आर शेपिंग. सो रिसेंटली लाइक FCI के थ्रू गवर्नमेंट ने ओपन मार्केट सेल्स भी करी थी ऑफ वीट, सो दैट जो वीट प्राइसेस में इंक्रीज देखा जा रहा था वो थोड़ा कम हो जाए. अगर सप्लाई थोड़ा इंक्रीज हो जाएगा वीट का तो प्राइसेस नेचुरली कम हो जाएंगे. सो बिकॉज ऑफ दैट ऑल्सो जो हमारे बफर स्टॉक था ऑफ वीट, दैट इज ऑल्सो फॉलोइंग. So this chart is also showing कि blue is for the rice, red one is for the wheat. So wheat it is gradually declining and it is at one of the lowest levels since 2017. So Ambani, he takes back the Asia's richest tag again. So Gautam Adani, who used to be at number 1, he tumbles down to number 24 in the global ranking. So having a wealth check, Mukesh Ambani's wealth, it totals around $83.4 billion net worth, and he was ranked at number 9 on the world billionaires list. Gautam Adani's net worth is now $47.2 billion. He's the second richest Indian after Ambani. And Bernard Arnault is a French luxury goods tycoon who tops the list for the first time. So these are there in the Forbes list, and some of the changes. तो फॉरेन ट्रेड पॉलिसी के बारे में भी हम काफी बात कर चुके हैं. अगेन दिस आर्टिकल इज अ रिपीट. So having a supportive ecosystem for the Indian gaming sector. So certain states they view online gaming as wagering or gambling, and there's a tendency to discourage online games. So the hesitant executive and the resulting lack of clarity has prompted banks to refuse to partner with the gaming companies and the marketplaces. So इसका direct impact obviously इस तरीके से भी देखा जा रहा है कि banks they are not willing to lend funds to the gaming companies because online gaming companies के ऊपर जो कुछ टैक्सेस इम्पोज किए जा रहे हैं उनको रेगुलेट करने के लिए. सो ऑनलाइन गेमिंग की जब हम बात करते हैं तो एक क्लियर आइडिया हमारे माइंड में, जो पहली चीज हमारे माइंड में आती है दैट इज कि दैट इज ऑल गैम्बलिंग. एंड जहाँ पे मनी की बात हो ऑब्वियसली दैट इज clearly we feel that that is related to gambling. So that's why these gaming companies they're not getting the support. So having supportive ecosystem that is important if we want Indian gaming industry and marketplace to expand. So it's important that the police and the tax departments they be familiarized and sensitized with how the industry works and the role of each stakeholder which is there. So finally taking up the Indian Express, NCRT books में कुछ changes किए गए हैं and specifically history या social science के NCRTs में. So among the key deletions, so जो की चीजें कुछ की stuff जो delete किया गया है that is related to गांधी जी's assassination. Class 12 के NCRT text में ये lines हटाई गई हैं. So मेन चीज यही होना चाहिए कि जब भी आपको ऐसा मतलब कोई भी डिसीजन ले रहे हो तो आपको एनालाइज करना इज इम्पोर्टेंट कि उस डिसीजन का क्या फायदा होने वाला है. सो ये स्टफ या ये डेटा या इंफॉर्मेशन डिलीट करके क्या फायदा होगा दैट इज द क्वेश्चन विच कम्स इनटू माय माइंड. एंड इसका क्या फायदा होगा दैट इज द मेन थिंग. एंड अगर पहले ये चीज हमारे एजुकेशन सिस्टम में थी तो हाउ दैट वाज हैविंग नेगेटिव इम्पैक्ट कि आज के टाइम में वी आर सीइंग कि हमें ये चीजें रिमूव करने की जरूरत है. तो दैट इज द मेन क्वेश्चन जो हमारे माइंड में आना चाहिए. दैट्स व्हाट आई फील. बाकी सारी चीजें हम ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. सो लेट्स मूव फॉरवर्ड. So COVID-19 cases they are still on rise. So please maintain the COVID appropriate behavior as you step out of your homes. So जो NCERT textbooks से चीजें delete की गई हैं they are related to Mughal era, Delhi Sultanate, emergency impact and 2002 riots. So इससे related यहाँ पे चीजें भी mention की गई हैं कि ये सब चीजें deleted, then they are no more a part of the NCERT textbooks. So क्या delete किया गया है वो हमारे लिए जानना इतना important नहीं है, but हम अगर इसके analysis में जाएं तो जैसे मैंने questions जो raise किए in the beginning, that is important for us to understand from basically an administrative perspective. Moving forward, everything is political over here. Coming to the editorials, Karl Marx once said that landlords, like all other men, they love to reap where they never sowed. So that's one thing. So dividing and ruling the West, that's what Russia and China they hope to do. But Ukraine invasion, it has cemented the US and Europe unity. So एक ये हमें consequence देखने को मिला है कि because of this Russia-Ukraine war, जो US and यूरोप के बीच में जो unity है वो और ज़्यादा strengthen हमें देखने को मिली है. एंड रशिया एंड चाइना की जो मेन पॉलिसी हम बोल सकते हैं, दे वांटेड टू डिवाइड एंड रूल द वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड. बट बिकॉज ऑफ दैट हम बोल सकते हैं कि इस वॉर की वजह से यूनिटी बिटवीन यूएस एंड यूरोप बहुत ज़्यादा स्ट्रांग हो गई है. उनकी क्लोजनेस, उनकी डिपेंडेंस दैट इज इंक्रीज्ड एंड स्ट्रेंथेंड ओवर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम, स्पेसिफिकली आफ्टर दिस रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर. सो उसको डिवाइड एंड रूल करना ऑब्वियसली इतना ईजी नहीं होने वाला है. एंड उनकी strategic partnership की बात करें, so even that is strengthening. So Russia and China, they hope कि exploiting the divisions within the West, it will help them transform the global order. So Sino-Russian dream of building a post-Western order, it has resonance in many parts of the world, including Delhi, but the Indian strategic community, it should not hold its breath. So the fault lines within the West, they are real, but they are by no means they are fatal. सो इसी चीज से रिलेटेड यहाँ पे बात हो रही है कि रशिया क्या बोल रहे हैं. सो बात मेन टॉपिक यही है कि डिवाइडिंग एंड रूलिंग द वेस्टर्न वर्ल्ड. सो जो साइनो यूरोपियन एंगेजमेंट सर्कल्स थे, देवर अराउंड टू इश्यूज. फर्स्ट की यहाँ पे हम यूरोप और रशिया की बात कर रहे हैं. सो सॉरी, यहाँ पे हम यूरोप और चाइना की बात कर रहे हैं. सो यूरोप वांट्स जी टू पुट प्रेशर ऑन द पुटिन टू एंड दिस वॉर इन यूक्रेन. सो यूरोप ऑब्वियसली इट वांट्स कि चाइना रशिया के ऊपर प्रेशर पुट करे टू एंड दिस वॉर, एंड बीजिंग वुड लाइक यूरोप टू डिस्टेंट इटसेल्फ फ्रॉम द यूएस ऑन इट्स चाइना पॉलिसी. एंड ऑब्वियसली चाइना क्या चाहेगा, चाइना ये चाहता है कि यूरोप यूएसए से थोड़ा डिस्टेंस मेंटेन करके रखे व्हेन इट कम्स टू यूएसए की चाइना पॉलिसी, एंड यूएसए को सपोर्ट ना करे. So it is unlikely that there will be a decisive movement on either issue, but both the sides they see their diplomatic dance as a valuable exercise, and Europe it is not ready to buy China's so-called peace initiative on Ukraine. And as the Euro foreign policy chief, it put it last Friday that China can't be a mediator in the Ukraine war because China does not distinguish between the aggressor and the victim. So एक ये चीज चल रही है. And so we see that China, it is definitely world's second biggest economy, and it has massive economic interdependence with the US. So even as Beijing, it takes the hard political line towards the Biden administration, it is teasing the Wall Street and US industry to come back and make money in China. So last week, Bao Forum, which is the so-called Davos of China, it is the new premier Li Qiang. It was promising a large audience of CEOs, including Apple's, to further open up its economy. So the large section of the US capital, they want to return to the good old days with China. It is not in doubt, but the political Washington, it has moved on from business as usual with Beijing. So definitely चीजें इस तरीके से reshape हुई है specifically after this war. So because of the Russia's aggression against Ukraine, it has pushed Europe back into US protection. So ये एक चीज हमें देखने को मिल रही है. And the new diplomatic joking between Europe and China, it will be of great interest to other powers, including India. So realists in Delhi, they note कि जो many differences are between the US and Europe, but they are aware that Western strategic unity that is endured since World War II. So Delhi knows कि Russia and China, they have now presented existential challenges in terms of military, economic, political, and ideological to the Western primacy. So it can see that Russia and Chinese overreach has cemented broad Western unity rather than separating Europe from the US. So जो Russia and China चाहते थे, exactly उसका opposite हो रहा है in the Western world. So there are data gaps when we talk about the trends in poverty and inequality, and there is this measurement problem. So estimates of poverty and inequality in India, it has been deeply contested, and differences that exist among the economists, not only on data, which forms the basis of their estimation, but also on the trends over the past decades. So not just on, जो भी data collect किया जाता है, but जो भी trends की बात होती है on poverty and inequality in India, so उसके ऊपर भी बहुत सारी मतलब we are not on the same page. There are a lot of differences and gap on that also. So sorry, in the absence of this official data for the recent years, it's been almost 10 years कि we have not have any official data regarding the poverty and the trends related to it. So इसके बारे में हम पहले भी बात कर चुके हैं. Latest data जो हमारे पास है, that is after the 2011-12 census. So more so, given the sharp differences, the opinion, the extent to which the pandemic it exacerbated poverty and inequality. So it is important कि we have the fresh set of data, and obviously जो पुराना data था, जो एक decade old data है, उसके ऊपर अब हम रिलाई नहीं कर सकते हैं, बिकॉज कोविड-19 की वजह से जो बेसिकली पॉवर्टी लेवल्स इंक्रीज हुए या कम हुए, जो भी हुआ, या इनइक्वालिटी किस तरीके से या किस लेवल या किस इंटेंसिटी से इंक्रीज हुई है, वो जानना हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है. सो दैट्स व्हाई न्यू एक्सरसाइज इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. एंड apart from that, obviously ये data use किया जाता है when it comes to formulation of any policies and schemes to reduce poverty. So वहाँ पे भी having a fresh set of data would be very, very important for us. So these trends there, however, these are at odds with the studies that draw on other data sources to estimate the poverty. So suppose in the State of Working India 2021 report, economists like Azim Premji University, they said that based on Center for Monitoring Indian Economy's data, they found कि pandemic it led to a sudden increase in poverty. So different sets of data हमारे पास है, but एक proper official set of data होना is very important. And so ये हमें पता definitely पता है कि pandemic की वजह से poverty definitely बहुत ज़्यादा increase. It suddenly it increased, and there was an income shock. That is average income of bottom 10% of the households, it was lower than 15,700 during the pandemic time period. So इसकी वजह से poverty बहुत ज़्यादा increase हुई है, and other indicator they suggest that more workers they fell back on the agriculture, indicating the absence of the non-farm employment. So obviously we saw such a huge scale of reverse migration back then कि जो हमने पहले earlier we talked about the achievements structural economy में कि we are trying to ensure कि ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोग they move out of the agricultural sector, but again pandemic की वजह से we are seeing कि जो share of people है workers है they are again shifted to the agricultural sector. So जो achievements से we are again back at the square one. And even MJ नरेगा के ऊपर भी जो dependence increase हुई during the pandemic time, that was massive. So in the absence of the official consumption expenditure data, reliance on alternate data sources, that has only risen. Obviously, जो हमारे पास अब alternate sources of data उसके ऊपर हमारी dependence increase हो गई है. And ये मैंने आपको कल भी बताया था कि इंडिया में when we estimate the poverty line, तो that is based on what? आपको पता होना चाहिए कि हमारी income spending या consumption expenditure के based पे we have the poverty line estimates in India. So that is important for us to know. And the absence of any timely and reliable data, especially during the times of uncertainty, that needs to be addressed. So some steps they have been taken, but more needs to be done. Like we have had employment surveys which were carried out, and the country's statistical system that needs to be strengthened. So that is a takeaway. तो जो न्यू फॉरेन ट्रेड पॉलिसी अभी रिसेंटली इंट्रोड्यूस की गई है, इट इज फोकसिंग ऑन फैसिलिटेशन एंड इतना ज़्यादा रेगुलेशन की बात नहीं कर रही है. सो फैसिलिटेशन हमने मेन ऑब्जेक्टिव्स की हमने बात करी थी, तो उससे हमें यही देखने को मिल रहा है या यही समझ आ रहा है, इट इज टॉकिंग एंड इज फोकसिंग मोर अपॉन द फैसिलिटेशन थिंग कि चाहे हम ई कॉमर्स एक्सपोर्ट्स की बात करें या फिर environment for the stakeholders which are involved in export चीज़ें उनके लिए थोड़ा मतलब इजी करना उनके लिए, इतना ज़्यादा जो भी प्रोसेस है या परमिशन या लाइसेंसेस आपको लेने पड़ते हैं उसमें ज़्यादा टाइम ना लगे, एंड बेसिकली इट इज़ ट्राइंग टू फैसिलिटेट थिंग्स। सो दैट्स देयर, एंड बाकी हम डिस्कस में डिटेल कर चुके हैं तो इसलिए इसको हम फिर से नहीं कर रहे हैं। So as we saw कि Finland it has joined NATO. So why Turkey it is making Sweden wait? So Sweden भी NATO को join करना चाहता, but why Turkey is trying to delay that thing? So that is the question. So why does Sweden wants to join NATO? पहला question तो ये है, and why Turkey is objecting to that? That is the next thing. So Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we saw कि Sweden and Finland they had to ditch long-held policies of the military non-alignment, and both the countries they see that NATO with its collective defense clause they are the best way to ensure their security. So obviously country हर एक country के लिए उनका सबसे पहला जो security perspective से interest यही होता है कि they are able to safeguard their territorial sovereignty, and जो citizens की security है interest है उनको safeguard कर सके. So that's what exactly Sweden and Finland they feel that joining NATO is going to be the best way forward for ensuring security for them. And to the majority of NATO members, they quickly ratified their applications, arguing that Finland it shares around 300-kilometer long border with Russia, and Sweden it would strengthen the alliance in the Baltic country. So जो NATO members थे even they supported कि दो countries को NATO का member बनना चाहिए, and there was no objection on that. So Turkey क्यों object कर रहा है on joining these countries with NATO? So Sweden it has criticized Turkey for human rights abuses and over democratic standards, urging the politicians in Turkey, which is Ankara is the capital of Turkey. So this is one accusation, and Turkey says that Stockholm harbors the members or what it considers the terrorist groups. So, and it has demanded that extradition as a step towards ratifying the Swedish membership. So Sweden's courts they have blocked some expulsions. So in recent weeks, Turkey it has objected to the protest in Stockholm, during which the Muslim holy book, the Quran, it was burned, and on a separate occasion, an effigy of Erdogan was hanged upside down. So Ankara says that these are the hate crimes, and Sweden says that they are covered by the freedom of speech law. So Turkey holds on the election on 14th of May, and NATO issue it may help divert the voters' attention away from the cost of living crisis as well. So that's there, and so finally, we saw that with the successful test, ISRO it is closer to Indian reusable launch vehicle. So this is going to make our space sector much more competitive, efficient, as we are going to save on cost by a huge amount. And it is the RLV Lex test for the aeronautical. It was conducted at Chitradurg in Karnataka. So there were test demonstrations, and ISRO has announced the trial of an RLV in 2010, but the mission was put off due to the technical reasons in 2010. So the first trial of RLV-TD took place in 2016, and a rocket powered by a conventional solid booster engine carried the 1.75-ton spacecraft to a height of about 56 kilometers. So as what is important for us is the advantages of this reusable launch vehicle. So नाम से इट इज क्लियरली पता चल रहा है कि इसको हम बार बार रीयूज कर सकते हैं। जो करंट टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे पास है दैट कैन ओनली बी यूज्ड वंस, सो उसकी वजह से वी हैव टू बेयर ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ कॉस्ट. सो हाई कॉस्ट दे आर अ मेजर deterrent to the space exploration, and a reusable launch vehicle it is considered to be low cost, reliable, and on demand mode of accessing the space. सो जो मैंने स्टार्टिंग में मेंशन किया, इट इज गोइंग टू मेक द सिस्टम मच मोर एफिशिएंट जहां तक कि हम स्पेस एक्सप्लोरेशन की बात करते हैं. सो नियरली 80 to 87% द कॉस्ट इन स्पेस लॉन्च व्हीकल इट गोज इनटू द स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ द व्हीकल. सो 80 to 87% ऑफ द कॉस्ट गोज इनटू दैट, सो व्हिच इज वेरी ह्यूज. एंड अगर हम इसको कम करने में सक्सेसफुल हो सकेंगे, so that would be a great achievement. So the cost of the propellants, they are minimal. जो propellants की cost है वो इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं होती है compared to the cost that goes into the structure of constructing the vehicle. So by using this reusable launch vehicle, the cost of the launch, it can be reduced by nearly 80% of the present cost. So which is very, very huge. So it's very important and it's a great achievement कि जो हमने अभी test भी किया, that was successful. So NASA's reusable space shuttles, they have carried out dozens of human space flight missions. So already NASA के पास एक reusable launch vehicle है. And since 2017, the private space launch services provider SpaceX, it has also demonstrated partially reusable launch systems with its Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy rockets. So SpaceX, it's also working on fully reusable launch vehicle systems, which is called Starship. So बाकी इनिशिएटिव्स की भी हमने बात कर ली, बेनिफिट्स की बात कर ली, जो कॉस्ट आता है उसका शेयर की बात कर ली. सो इफ यू मेंशन दैट वुड बी रियली हैविंग एन इम्पैक्ट. तो अगर हम लिक्विडिटी कंडीशन की बात करें, सो जब भी इकोनॉमी के सेंस में वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट लिक्विडिटी इज द अमाउंट ऑफ अवेलेबल कैश. सो कितना मनी इट इज इन सर्कुलेशन इज द इकोनॉमी, इज व्हाट डू वी मीन बाय द लिक्विडिटी कंडीशन. सो गोइंग अहेड, लिक्विडिटी इट मे रिमेन टाइट. सो बेसिकली एक ही चीज भी होती है कि जितनी ज्यादा लिक्विडिटी होगी, जितना ज्यादा पैसा सर्कुलेशन में होगा इन द इकोनॉमी, उतनी ज्यादा इन्फ्लेशन होगी. एंड सिंस ऑलरेडी इन्फ्लेशन हाई है, वी आर ट्राइंग टू कंटेन इट डाउन. सो लिक्विडिटी कम होनी चाहिए इस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे, बट इतनी भी ज्यादा कम नहीं कि वो फिर बेसिकली लोगों के लिए प्रॉब्लम बन जाए. सो liquidity condition, it eases on higher government spending. So abhi right now liquidity, it is we are in a quite safer territory because government spending भी काफी सही है अभी इस point of time पे. So RBI's liquidity absorption की बात करें तो on 2nd of April RBI's net liquidity absorption, it stood at rupees 1.5 lakh crores, which is the highest in 3 months. So obviously RBI अपना it is trying to assess things. And अगर बहुत ज़्यादा surplus liquidity हो जाती है तो RBI it also absorbs that or extracts that surplus liquidity out of the system. So that's how balancing is done कि एक side government is spending more and RBI is trying to balance कि इतनी ज़्यादा भी surplus liquidity ना हो कि हमारी economy पे inflation पे बहुत ज़्यादा impact हो उस चीज़ का. So besides the high short-term deposits from the corporate also contributed to the easing of the liquidity situation. So higher short-term deposits and the current surplus liquidity condition, it follows the tightness which was seen in the system from 15th of March on account of the advance tax and goods and services tax payments जो की गई. So उसकी वजह से एक बहुत ज़्यादा impact देखा गया on reduction in the liquidity, जो surplus liquidity थी. So now the situation, it is again back to normal. And but right now experts, they expect कि जो अभी present surplus liquidity situation and that is going to be temporary. And going ahead, liquidity, it is expected to remain tight क्योंकि government might not be able to spend aggressively because of the low cash balances and higher leakage in the currency in circulation. So आने वाले time में liquidity situation, it could tighten more. And that's there. So Chile is also looking to include digital services as well as trade agreements with India. So यहाँ पे हम rupee based trade की भी बात कर सकते हैं and digital services में भी Chile wants more collaboration, more coordination with India. So UPI payments globally already they are working, they are functioning in different countries. यहाँ पे हम सिंगापुर की बात करें, UAE की बात करें, so there are a lot more number of countries जहाँ पे we have approved कि UPI would be functional. So that's there. And Chile is also coming forward on similar lines. auto sales, auto retail sales, they are seeing double digit growth, so that's also a good thing for the automobile sector. And the retail sales of the passenger vehicles, it reached a record high of 36 lakh vehicles. Windfall tax की हम already बात कर चुके हैं. And that's all for today. Thank you for joining on Sarkari, and you'll be also provided with the PDF link in the description box. And please hit the like button for this video if you've been following this every single day, and if you feel that you're taking some advantage or taking something out of this video and as this video as useful for you and that is helping you in the preparation in any which ways. So do subscribe to our channel, hit the like button for this video, and do share it. Thank you so much for joining us.